and welcome to what I know is going to be a really interesting and insightful session. For those of you who don't know me, I am Sarah Windrum, the current chair of the Coventry and Warwickshire Local Enterprise Partnership, but also a business founder and an investor predominantly in the tech ecosystem in and around Leamington. We've got a great panel here today, a great group of speakers. I'm going to get them to introduce themselves as they come up. The format of today is that each speaker is going to give you a bit of an insight into their organisation, their story, how they're reaching out globally, and then hopefully we'll have time for a Q&A at the end as well, so get thinking about your questions. But I wanted to set the scene, actually. I've just graduated as a data scientist, so I'm obsessed with stats and evidence. When we talk about global Leamington, and I wanted to kind of find out, are we global? What does that actually mean in terms of our population? So I went to the Office of National Statistics. It's very exciting, I know, and their census, the 2021 census, just to get an idea of what our population was like. And so I have to give a bit of a disclaimer here that if you do go onto the census website, you'll see that it's done by districts. Obviously, that's Warwick District for us. And then it's split by wards. So Leamington, obviously, is a number of wards. So to get the idea of the town, I had to do a bit of kind of calculating and averaging myself. So just a bit of a disclaimer there. But I thought you might be interested to know that almost one in three residents of South Leamington were not born in the UK, so the South Leamington wards. That stretches to 1 in 5 when you look at the whole of the town. But I thought that that kind of shows how global we are in terms of our population. And interestingly, more than 2/3 of those came to the UK over the age of 18. So coming to study and coming to work. And I know you'll hear about global talent a bit more later. And the majority of our global population at the time of the census had been here for more than a year, so settling in Leamington. And I was also doing some work last year with Bid Leamington, which many of you will know. And interestingly, just within their geography, you've got over 25% of the businesses within their geography have physical global locations. And I have to say this because I was chatting to her before. We've got companies like Motion House with that global presence as well, and the global talent that comes here. So, we are truly at that town punching above its weight in terms of our global reach. So I think that's enough from me in terms of context. I'm going to hand over to Graham, first of all, from Third Kind Games, to give you a bit of an insight into that company and their global reach. Thanks, Graham.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's great to see so many faces in the crowd today. I'm going to give you... do we have our slides? Just wait for the slides. Thank you. So I'm going to give you a bit of a brief history of the game development industry in Leamington and Warwickshire over the last 35 years. So before I kick off, next slide, please. A little bit about me. So my name's Graham Watson. I'm co-founder and director at Third Kind Games in Leamington, an independent game studio. I've been working in the games industry in the area for well over 20 years now. I've been a programmer since I was old enough to use a keyboard, which was back in the days when keyboards were the computers. I started off working in the industry at Codemasters, working on their racing titles, including the Race Driver series, Colin McRae, Dirt, and Grid series, before moving to Activision in 2008, where I was lucky enough to work on the DJ Hero series of games, and finished up my tenure there as a technical director on Guitar Hero. Next slide, please. So my agenda today, I'm going to go through 3 things. Give you a very brief history lesson on the last 35 years of game development in the area. I'm going to talk about what impact the industry has had on the area, both in terms of charity, the community, and the economy of the area. And then a brief overview of my company, which is Third Kind Games. Only 20 minutes or so to go through all of this, so it's not going to be an in-depth history lesson. It's more intended to be a whirlwind tour to really get the impression across of just how big the industry is and how important it is to the area. So we can start off, next slide please, with a history lesson. And next slide please. So the games industry in Leamington started back in 1986 when Richard and David Darling founded Codemasters. The brothers later sold their interest in the business in 2007, and in 2021 the business sold again to California-based Electronic Arts for a cool $1.2 billion. As Codemasters grew over the years, so did the talent base and the number of talented game developers in the area. And naturally, over time, independent studios such as Freestyle Games and Playground Games formed in the area. Over time, the area then attracted multinational interest, and studios that from overseas also came to the area, such as Sumo. And as we go a bit further, some of the larger worldwide companies, such as Activision and Microsoft, then started to join the area and wanted to be part of the growing developer base and the talent pool that was in the area. And that in turn led to more startups, which ultimately the town ended up being coined Silicon Spa in tribute to California's Silicon Valley. Next slide, please. So in total, there's 225 games developers in the West Midlands area. Of those, 62 are based in Warwickshire, and then the really interesting thing is that Leamington Spa is the capital, with 47 of those 62 just in these few square miles, which is more than 20% of all of the West Midlands game developers based in this little town. It's made up of a diverse mix of studios, some less than 20 people, some hundreds of employees. And many of the local developers work with international studios such as Activision Blizzard, Microsoft, Ubisoft, EA, and then large worldwide publishers such as Tencent and Scopely. Next slide, please. So on the screen here, just a handful of the names that are operating in the area, either having studios of their own or operating through the local studios here, either as investors or as clients. And then next slide, please. And then just a handful of the games that have come out of the area. I couldn't possibly list them all. There must be hundreds in total, dating back to before the PlayStation 1 days, over the last 35 years, but a few on the board there that you may or may not know came directly from this area. And these are shipped worldwide. Next slide, please. So next, I'm just going to talk briefly about the impact that the industry has on the area. And we can broadly split this into three areas: charity impact, community impact, and economic impact. So next slide, please. First of all, let's talk about the charity impact of the industry on the area. There's some industry-specific charities such as Special Effect, which provide physically disabled people with the ability to take part in computer games through innovative use of technologies, and allows them to feel like equals alongside their peers and have fun. In October of 2021, Special Effects debuted their One Special Day program, which raised over $800,000 for the charity. The pictures you can see on the slides here of the cars were from an event that took place last year called Twin Town Challenge, where, again, organised through Special Effects, all of the game studios in the UK were invited to buy a car for less than £500, deck it up, put their own decorations on, and then go on tour from Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire to Le Touquet in France and back, doing a series of fundraising challenges along the way. That event to date has raised over £850,000 for the charity. We've also done some smaller things, such as donations of food and supplies to Ukraine. And then the pictures you can see here at the bottom, we sent 2 teams last year to help out at the Helping Hands Soup Kitchen in Leamington, both supplying and cooking and serving food to those who need it most. Next slide, please. A few of the charities on the board here behind are charities that we support as well as other studios in the area. There's a lot more to list as well, but either through direct funding or supplying people to be able to help out at events and fundraising events. Next slide, please. Next up is community impact. So there's many industry-specific events in the area, such as Interactive Futures, which is on later this year, and the Silicon Spa exhibition, which is on right now down at the Pump Rooms. I think it's on until May, so by all means head down there. It's kind of set up as a museum that goes into depth about the history of the gaming industry in the area. And then non-industry specific events as well, such as the photo on the bottom left here, which is Warwickshire Pride, which ourselves and some other studios sponsored last year to support the LGBTQ+ community in the area. Next slide, please. Okay, so a globally significant gaming cluster employs more than 2,000 people in the Leamington area, which equates to over 10% of the UK total in game development. 1 in every 50 people in Leamington are estimated to be a games developer. And I can attest to that because you literally can't walk through town at lunchtime without bumping into 1 or more game developers. As of January this year, there were 168 live jobs just in the Leamington area alone. And many of the studios, ourselves included, do a lot of work with the schools in the area to do talks and develop skills of students and offer internship programs for students that are coming out of university to be able to get a foothold into the industry. And then lastly, value. There's a turnover of £101 million in the area, which makes Leamington area's economic contribution from game development the biggest outside of London and Slough. And preliminary figures from the Digital Entertainment and Retail Association's annual report shows that 42.1% of the UK's total home entertainment revenues last year came from video games. That's bigger than the video and music industry combined. 3/4 of the digital media companies in Leamington are video game developers, whereas a more typical share would be 5 to 10%. So that really puts Leamington on the map as one of the UK's biggest game development hubs. And in fact, Leamington was rated first for economic contribution to the from games companies in proportion to other industries. Next slide, please. Okay, so now just a brief overview of my company, which is Third Kind Games. So if we go on to the next slide, please. So if we rewind a bit to 2016, myself and the 8 other founders of the company were working together back at Activision. We were working on the Guitar Hero series of games at the time. They'd been working for many years together. And after shipping Guitar Hero, we decided that it was the time felt right for us to start our own studio and try it alone. So there's some pictures on the board here of our first year in the development, and I'm eternally grateful to the council for offering spaces such as this for startups like us to be able to work in. It may look like kind of small, cramped and difficult conditions, but honestly, for a startup studio that's self-funded with no secure revenue streams, having this low-cost office space that's easy for studios to work in allows us to find our footing and get off the ground, and they're absolutely essential for the area, something that Leamington does really well. Next slide, please. So fast forward over the next 6 years. This is our studio today, which is based up at the top of town. Obviously a different building. It's a beautiful old school building that we've been lucky enough to be able to do up to put our own personality on. And next slide, please. We currently recruit nearly 90 people, based primarily in Leamington, but actually across the UK and Europe as well. And that's split across all of the departments in game development. So we have production teams, art teams, programming teams, design teams, and QA teams, as well as office teams. And then next slide, please. And over the last year, we've also expanded into Poland and Spain, where we now have studios that allow us to continue our recruitment efforts in their hubs overseas. Next slide, please. Some of the projects that we've worked on, we've been very lucky over the years. We've been able to work with some pretty big clients, including Amazon Games and Microsoft. We're currently working with Mythical Games with our latest release game, Blanco's Block Party. And we're also working with Activision Blizzard on a title that I'm not allowed to talk about. We've got a third client also, which I'm not allowed to mention yet on the slides. And we're also very lucky that over the last year, we've been able to start work on our own IP internally, which we're hoping to be announcing later this year. Next slide, please. So that's it. In summary, the games industry is absolutely huge to Leamington and provides a massive economic impact to charities and communities in the area. For the schools, we do a lot of work engaging with them, and there's a lot of opportunities for careers for people coming out of schools in this area. And lastly, with so many overseas global companies either operating through independent companies in the area or having their own studios directly in the area, there truly is plenty of opportunity for global domination. Thank you all.
The community impact and the charity impact actually really important to emphasise. And I think certainly, regional development agencies like LEPs, we focus a lot on the economic impact, but actually that's really important. And just anecdotally, I'm an enterprise advisor for Campion School, and the work that the game studios locally have been doing there, I've been told by the teachers that it's made a lot of the students work a lot harder at maths because they realise how important maths is to that kind of career. So yeah, thank you for all that great work. I'd like to hand over to Adam now from RBL, who is going to tell us another pretty impressive global story. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Seamless transition this time. Thank you. Right. Hello. It's a big hello. I'm Adam. I'm creative director at a branding agency around the corner called RBL. I've been there for 7 years. That means I've been a part of the Leamington creative community for 7 years. Next slide, please. So this is a story about how we went global, but I'll start with who we are. Okay, so we're strategic brand experts. That means we solve brand problems. We make brands work better. We're not only concerned with making brands look better. Next slide, please. Let's see if we can make this work. Okay, so clients come to us when something's changed. We help brands respond. So something's changing, they need to get ahead of it. And I think we can all agree that the world's changing pretty fast at the moment. So we work really closely with clients to make sure they're staying ahead of those changes. And we do that through, next slide, please. Okay, so we discover what's changing, what it means for them, how they need to respond. We then define that response. We work with them to develop their strategy. We then design a solution and work to deliver it. So research, strategy, creative, and rollout. Next slide, please. So our clients are complex. That's our specialism. We work really well with complex clients. And complex can mean a lot of things. It could be complex audiences, like Severn Trent. That's everybody in the region. Doesn't get much more complex than that. Or it could be a complex subject, like UKRI and science and technology investment, trying to predict the future. Or it can be complex governance, like ZSL, where you've got a board, you've got a council, you've got a membership, you've got fellows, you've got visitors to the zoos. All of those people have got to be taken into account. Or it can be all of the above, like Birmingham 2022, a complex audience, complex subject, and complex governance. So next slide, please. So Birmingham 2022 was our first step to going global. That was the big client that got us started on our journey. It helped us go from 8 people in a back room in Leamington, where, over the last 7 years, the journey we've gone on client by client is we've gone from doing student unions to doing the university, from doing the estate agent to doing the housing developer, from branding sports teams to branding the global sporting events like Birmingham 2022. One client at a time, building on the last. So this, what I'm going to tell you now, is the story of how we took that first step, how we won our first global brand. Next slide, please. Okay, so there's some people who are going to roll their eyes at this next one. So the first part of the first step was we got really good at tenders. Tenders level the playing field. They allow you to take on significant projects. They're a great way of building experience and building profile. They get you into rooms that you wouldn't necessarily get in when you're 8 people in a back room in Leamington. So we did a great tender response. Next slide, please. And I think you're probably going to have to go, yeah, okay, I'll leave there. We got really good at doing tenders. We did a great tender response for Birmingham 2022. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our studio. We were match fit for doing that tender, but when we got to the last stage, when we got down to the pitch, when we got into that room with the big boys, the client told us that 2 things swung it our way. Next slide, please. The first of those was passion. We delivered a great technical response in the tender. The client pointed out how in the pitch, we delivered a really emotional response. We helped demonstrate that Birmingham was a significant part of our lives. So as an example of that, the man with the moustache in the middle there with the high-vis jacket on, that's my dad, missing Christmas Day because he's laying track at New Street Station. So it doesn't get much more involved in Birmingham than that. But if we go to next slide, please. It wasn't just emotional because Birmingham had played a big part in our life. We'd also had our careers here. We've been branding between the team that we had back then in Birmingham for a long time. So we had built a significant part of Birmingham life. We'd helped weave the fabric that makes Birmingham. So we were really passionate about it, but next slide, please. We were also really committed. We promised in our response to go further, dig deeper, and invest more to get the people of Birmingham and the West Midlands involved in creating this brand. We set ourselves the challenge for Birmingham 2022 of collecting 2022 voices. Next slide, please. So this slide brings those 2 things together. The commitment to tour shopping malls, school halls, newsrooms, community venues, and the passion to get up at 3 a.m. to drive the van to set up the stand in Maryhill Centre and stand there all day and shake hands with 1,000 people as they walk past and have every conversation ourselves. Next slide, please. And it was worth the effort because those conversations were gold dust. Having each conversation ourselves was incredible because it meant that we didn't just hear how the people of Birmingham and the West Midlands felt about hosting the games. We felt it with them. We were right there, sensing that energy, sensing that excitement, but also that trepidation. Next slide, please. And the feedback came from, the really powerful insight came from unlikely places. So this is one of our school engagement sessions. And during this session, I asked one 8-year-old, okay, so which famous person do you think Birmingham is like? And the answer came back, Batman. And you think, okay, all right, it's an 8-year-old, he's going to Batman. But then he followed it straight up with, because we don't need superpowers, we just make things happen. And that really cut to the heart to what Birmingham was about. And we're going to come back to that thought in a minute. But it chimed, next slide, please, over and over again with things that we heard. It was the diversity of people that make this place. The dynamism, the opportunity, the experiences, all of those things provided by that diversity of people. And we kept hearing, we love it. Birmingham and West Midlands weren't just claiming diversity, they were loving it. Okay, so that was the first thought that started to ring true for us. Then we move into the next slide, please. We also really clearly heard that there's not the clear geography that holds Birmingham and the West Midlands together. There's no M25 that holds us all together. There's no Mersey to act as a border. There's none of the superpowers of big landmarks of other places. But there is a shared outlook, an approach, an attitude, which makes this a community of communities. But those communities felt quite separate. So next slide, please. So we needed a rallying cry. We needed to invite every part of that community of communities to get involved, to celebrate the diversity, to become part of the games, to celebrate at the games for everyone. Next slide, please. So that was our core strategy, and we built on that, and we developed a fully rounded strategy for the games. And this is a very early version of that from about, well, I mean, it's 5-6 years ago now, but you can still see how this has informed the games. Okay, in there, in the middle of that, we've got a phrase, make a world of difference at the games for everyone. If that opening ceremony wasn't a world of difference, I don't know what was. Next slide, please. Once we had our strategy, we needed to express it. And we weren't going to leave the community behind. We wanted to take them on the journey with us. So these are just a couple of the co-creation sessions that we had, in this case with students. And the students were really good because they pushed us to be braver with this. They pushed us to be bolder, and we thought we were being pretty brave and bold to start with. Next slide, please. And together we focused on finding a solution on a way to join that community of communities together, to really show how we could hold it together. So this is us playing and trying to find a mark which could represent the region, drawn from the region, by literally linking together all of those communities. And one of the reasons we were so keen on that as a solution was that because Birmingham and the West Midlands has a community from every nation and territory of the Commonwealth, if you join the region together, you're in effect joining the Commonwealth together. So how did we know when we found our mark? And next slide, please. We were getting pretty confident. We thought we'd found something. We started to go out and we started to do testing. And in one of the early testing sessions, going back to those school children you saw earlier, we had one route with a bee in it. And before I'd finished presenting that route, the children, they all started drawing it for themselves, taking it as their own, doing their own thing with it. This was a way for them to tell their own story, to get their own ideas across, and they immediately connected with it. And then on the right-hand side, we've got a picture which is the proof of that. That's taken from Games Time, taken from a local school where the children have literally been creating the logo for themselves. We wanted a logo that the region could own, and we think we delivered it. We think we found, next slide please. So we think we found a dynamic shape, a bee that linked the communities together, a bee with the strength to be able to tell all those different stories, to survive all the different uses, a bee with lots of energy, a bee that could support the region, a bee that was going places. And this is the little video that we put together, as part of the launch campaign, but there was a rough version of this shown in the final presentation to get the route signed off in the top of one of those towers above Snow Hill Station in a room full of people in very expensive looking suits. Our bee that's going places. Okay, so then next slide, please. And then I'm not going to bore you with lots and lots of the creative because hopefully, unless you were hiding under a rock, you were exposed to lots of it over the summer. But this slide just shows, again, that initial work really did inform the games. So top right there is an image that's one of our very first kind of experiments of what we could do with the bee, trying to mock it up as some really nice environmental art. And then bottom right is the final countdown clock in Centenary Square. And you can see how that link maintained, how that work stayed true all the way through. Next slide, please. But before we could get there, before we could get to that amazing 2 weeks, we had to sell the games. And before we could sell the games to the world, we needed to convince a skeptical region. We had to show that this was their games. We had to show that when we said it was the games for everyone, we really meant everyone. So we worked really hard during the launch campaign to get out back into that community of communities, find representatives of each, wrap them up in the games and say, hey, this is the games for you. We wanted people to be able to see themselves in the games. And it really worked. The launch campaign smashed all the targets that were set to us. Next slide, please. But in the preparation, during the creation of that initial launch campaign, it became clear that the Commonwealth Games Federation brand, the kind of the wrapper, the glass that this would contain all of this work, wasn't telling the same unifying strong story, and it wasn't delivering the impact with which the Birmingham brand was going to. So off the strength of that work, we were offered the Commonwealth Games Federation brand Reproject 2, our second step to going global. One project building on the next. Okay, next slide, please. So again, hopefully you've all seen lots of this, but just to say that for us, having been there right at the start, having pitched this work when there was only 4 people working for the games, having been the 5th person in the room, having gone all across the region trying to gather that insight, to see that brand come to life really was a privilege. And it felt to us like it transformed the region. Next slide, please. And we've got the stats to prove it. 90% of residents think it will have positively changed the perception of the region. So that's a dramatic shift in the confidence for the region. Next slide, please. And all of that work led to a dramatic shift in our own confidence, to seek out the bigger opportunities, to take on the bigger competition, and having the tools to win when we take on that bigger competition. So we'd taken our first step to going global, and we continue to go global. Next slide, please. One brand at a time, one building on the next. That's where we are. Having started in that back room doing student unions, this is where we are today, 7 years later. That's it. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for that, Adam. That story just makes me tingle. I think you've absolutely captured, as you said, that the games for everyone and what that meant to all of us over the summer. So yeah, thank you for your great work on that. I think there's also some really important advice in there as well about going for those global tenders and not being afraid. I know tenders are very time consuming, and I was one of those people who did roll my eyes, but that's really good advice if you're looking for that global reach and those global clients. So thank you for that. Now I would like to welcome our final speaker and one of the newest members of the Leamington creative community. It's Gareth from Cogent to tell us a little bit about why they're coming here and what they're doing.
Very good. Hello everybody. So yes, as Sarah rightly says, I'm a slight interloper because we haven't quite moved in yet, but we're going to be very soon. Now I'll just wait for my slides to come up. My wife, by the way, did stop me from having any jokes ready for moments like this. She said, just don't do it, whatever you do. So we're going to be your neighbours, and short of arriving with a tin of biscuits and maybe a flask of tea, I thought we'd instead do the PowerPoint version and just tell you a little bit about who we are and what we're planning to do when we make it over to Leamington a little bit later in the year. If we crack on to the next slide, please. What I thought I'd do, if it's okay with you, is tell you a little bit about Cogent, for those of you who don't know who we are and what we do. And then I'll tell you a little bit about the project that we are currently in the process of creating and what we hope we'll be able to bring to Leamington and be part of this incredible community that you've got going on. So if we just flick on to the next slide, please. So effectively, Cogent is... we're a marketing communications agency. We're a group of businesses, actually. A few things up on there. There's about 70 of us. That'll be about 85 by the middle of this year. We've been around a very long time. Started in 1930, one of the first businesses of our kind in the UK. We are one of the campaign's best places to work, which means that people like working at Cogent. And we're a drum recommended agency, which means clients say nice things about us. We are IPA CPD Gold accredited, which means we focus a lot on the learning and development of our people. And we're part of something called the Network One, which is a global network of independent businesses like ours that allows us to deliver work on the ground in something like 80 or 90 other countries in the world. So that's a little bit about us and, if you like, our global footprint, but we're very much Midland stalwarts and proud to be so. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So, I mentioned that we're actually a group of businesses. So Cogent, you can think of us as like an advertising agency. We do lots of other stuff as well, but you'd know us for making ads. Junction 11 Creative Studios, based in Banbury. We do lots of film and photography and retouching and animation and that kind of stuff. The most sort of recent addition to our family is made by Sonder, who are a storytelling, content creation business. And so together we make up a group of businesses that we call the Cogent Group. If we move on. So I like this quote. It says, unless the belief changes, the behaviour will not change. And when we're doing marketing, and apologies if I'm preaching to the choir here, because there's probably quite a lot of people who are a lot smarter at marketing than me over there. But effectively what we're doing is we're looking at trying to change the behaviour of a group of people in some way on behalf of a brand. Either we're trying to get people to do more of something or less of something, or to start doing something or to stop doing something. And we think that the thing that triggers those behaviour changes is our beliefs. So the stuff we do is all about trying to influence those beliefs. So if we go on to the next slide, that says what I've just said, which is at Cogent, we create belief that changes behaviour. And then if we flick onto the next one, hopefully a video will play. There you go.
With Baker Foil to bring you some lovely festive recipes that are going to use up all your leftovers.
There you go, it's a little flavour of some of the stuff we get up to. Forgive the presenter's trick of taking up some of my time just showing a video, but hopefully, and I've never heard that music that loud before, so that was fun. If we move on to the next slide, please. And of course, the theme of what we're talking about here is this idea of global Leamington. And we're lucky enough to have worked with a number of businesses, both kind of big, global established brands and kind of start-up and scale-up businesses who have ambition to be present in a number of markets around the world. And what I think this certainly reminds us, and hopefully reminds all of us in this room, is that we in the Midlands, and of course in Leamington, we really can punch above our weight. We can deliver some brilliant work for brilliant brands all around the world, as we've just seen in the previous presentations. And so hopefully that's a little bit of what we want to try and add to the mix when we come to be part of the Leamington crew. Okay, so if we move on to the next slide. When we were thinking about coming to Leamington and what we wanted to do next with our business, this is the sort of the thing that one of the things we started thinking about. I'm sure you'll all know a lot more about this Medici effect than I do, but I know the basic principle, which is the idea here, I'll read it out. The increase in creativity and innovation occurs through diversity. When ideas and talented people from different fields are brought together to collaborate, step changes can occur. So if we take that to its next conclusion, next slide. For us, in that video, you saw some examples of some outdoor advertising and some PR and some stuff in social media and there's some TV and some radio and various different types of things. And if you imagine those sort of lines, they're all the different sort of skill sets and capabilities and creative craft that we bring together to help brands to deliver against their objectives, to help change that behaviour. But really, if we move on, where that real creativity and innovation happen is the intersection between those things. So we bring all those different creative skill sets together to help crack these challenges for clients. The real innovation, the real creativity, the real spark happens when those things cross and we get an intersection. So then we started thinking, how could we multiply that up? How can we take our business to its next stage by thinking of that on a much bigger scale? So if we flick on, the best way to predict the future is a Peter Drucker quote. My presentation wouldn't be complete without one. But that was the idea. We want to create something new. What is the future of a business like ours? Let's try and create something new. So if we then move on, what we want to do is transform our company into a community. We want to create our own community as part of the wider Leamington creative community. So if we flick on then, that community of creativity, obviously you'll have seen that brands and creative agencies, production houses, that's our sweet spot, that's what we know. But we also know that the future of creativity and those intersections and where that innovation is going to come from can only happen if we surround ourselves with and become integrated with all those other types of really interesting creative people, of which there are lots in Leamington, right? So it feels right to us that why don't we go there to create the next stage of our business? And then if we crack on to the next slide. So the next thing we want to do is turn a building into that Centre for Creative Excellence, and some of you will know that's the United Reformed Church, which you will have seen under scaffold for some of the recent months. That will be the new home for that community of creativity. And if we flick onto the next slide, what we want to do there is bring together three things. So it's about creation, it's about production, it's about education. If we go to the next slide, please. So the building and the community that we want to create around it will be called The Fold, and we want to welcome everybody to The Fold. If we go to the next slide, it'll have various elements to it. So it will become a space for that creative collaboration, and we want to welcome people in to come and share the space with us so that we can create those intersections where creativity and innovation can occur. Anybody from any corner, any walk of creative life, we welcome them to come and share the space with us. If we move on, there'll also be a production hub there. So for those of you who know the URC, there is this amazing space in the basement into which, if we flick on, we will be putting a suite of various different types of studios for creation of film and audio and a whole bunch of things from the broadest spectrum of creativity to tech and to gaming. But it's important to us that it's not just for established businesses and big brands that can come and use this space. We want to offer opportunity to people who wouldn't otherwise get access to this kind of thing. And we want to do that through a number of initiatives, but perhaps the biggest of those initiatives is the partnership that we're going to be doing, if we flick onto the next slide, with SAE. You may have seen that SAE are here today, and they are an incredible university that specialises in creative media, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them in a minute. So, in fact, I'll do it now. It's a university that has 52 campuses worldwide, and you can see up here, they specialise in animation, audio, the music business, film, games, media, web. So this is an incredible specialist university. However, this will be the first campus around the world where there's a direct tie-in with industry, because as we know, with courses like this and these disciplines like this, the hardest thing can be, how do I translate that into going out into the world and getting a job? But the great thing is that what we're hoping to bring to Leamington is this kind of ready-made pool of amazing talent. If we flick onto the next slide, I mean, here are some of the alumni of SAE globally. For anybody who's of a similar age and music taste to me, then the fact that Nigel Godrich, who was behind the mixing desk for most of Radiohead's output, came from SAE would be possibly the exciting one up there. But these are Grammy Award winners, they are Academy Award winners, they're Australian Music Prize Award winners. Now, wouldn't it be amazing if, as of this year, when we open the fold and we bring SAE into Leamington, we could be starting the journey to create the next Grammy and next Academy Award winners around the world. That's what we want to do by opening this new campus of SAE. The other thing I should mention, by the way, a little bit later on this evening, if anybody's interested to find out, there is an open event for SAE happening at the pump rooms. So if after all of this brilliant event has run its course, and if you've still got the appetite for a bit more event, then please feel free to come down to the pump rooms where we're going to be telling everybody a little bit more about exactly what you can do as part of the courses with SAE. We move on. So there you go. For those of you who know with the Creative Quarter at Spencer's Yard, that's where it will be. There's the URC, and then there's the building next to it called the Nursery, and that will become this latest campus of the university. Conscious I've got to turn my head to the mic, sorry. Next slide, please. So yeah, these are the founding members of the Fold, and as I said, we want to welcome people in, so if we flick to the next slide, this was going to be really slick if I had a clicker. If we go to the next slide, and the next slide, and the next slide, thank you. We wanted to welcome as many members of that creative community, because we know there's loads of you out there. We want to talk to you. We want to say, come and share the space with us. Come and use the facilities. Come and collaborate with other creative businesses. Come and use the studio facilities. If we flick onto the next slide, there you go. So there you go. This is that's interesting. That image top left, I don't know what that is. We flick on again. Right, that's me. That's me. That's my LinkedIn. Let's see if that QR code works. Try it. Give it a go. If it scans, then hopefully it'll take you through to my LinkedIn profile. I want to chat to as many people as I can who are interested in what we're doing at the URC and with the Fold. Come and find us. Come and give us a chat. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And because, as I say, I'm a slight interloper. We're the new neighbour. But we want to get to know as many of you as we can and hopefully come and have a positive impact in terms of the Leamington creative community and global Leamington. And let's go and get create some award winners, shall we? Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. Welcome, neighbour. And I have to say, I'm sure you know, but you're in exactly the right place for everything that you said in terms of collaboration, creativity, community. Leamington has that absolutely at its heart. So, yeah, welcome. And we look forward to seeing you in the URC in the Fold, joining the Fold. So I'm looking at David now to throw out the roaming mic box thing. But has anyone got any questions? If you haven't, I've got some. Oh yeah, I think there's a hand over there.
Hello. I've got a gaming question. With the sort of popularity and increase in kind of AA and indie games coming out, do you see kind of more indie dev and AA devs popping up in the town, or do you kind of see more of a dominance of the big AAA studios and that sort of thing, and how do you kind of see that affecting the town in the long run?
So I would probably say the majority of the studios in the area are independent studios. Studios like mine and many other independent studios have a model where we do work for hire for the larger companies and at the same time build our own games. So you actually get, a lot of studios will work on both AAA and AA kind of titles. So overall, I would probably say there's a handful of the AAA companies in the area, the Microsofts, EA, Ubisoft, but the majority of the studios in the area are AA, but sometimes doing AAA work with larger companies.
And do you see more kind of those smaller studios popping up in the future?
Absolutely. So, there's such a large developer base here, 2,000 individuals in the area that are skilled in game development. It's a natural evolution that people naturally outgrow the companies they're working at, get together in their little friends groups and start new companies. And that's how all of the independents around here have ultimately started. So it's only a kind of proliferation effect that as more AAA companies come to the area, you naturally get more AAs and independents starting up as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think, can I recommend, if you haven't been to see it, I know Graham mentioned it earlier, the Silicon Spa exhibition at the Art Gallery, because that talks a lot about the kind of history. But I think it's interesting, Unit 2 was bought by Meta as well, wasn't it? So there's a lot of that kind of global acquisition. But I think Graham's right, there's always that kind of swell to kind of build up and get to that level as well. So yeah, I think we're a great place for all of that kind of activity. Great question, thank you. Any other questions? Oh, yep. Could you gently throw the box?
You've partly answered my question. I was going to ask what's happened to Interactive Futures, and maybe you could elaborate. I mean, just can you clarify, did they actually take place last year at all? And if not, why was there no announcement about why they didn't take place?
So I think Interactive Futures, and I'm sort of not part of the committee, but work quite closely with Stacey O'Connor. I think it was always meant to be annual. So a bit like Spark, actually, you know, it got momentum pre-COVID and then went virtual for the last one, which I know was well received with a lot of schools because they had quite a lot of material then that they could use. But yeah, it's back this year. So it didn't happen last year, but it's back this year. But yeah, I think the idea is that it will be a biannual event. Don't know if anyone else wants to add to that. Oh, there's a question right at the back. I was going to say, is that Carol? I can't see. I've got lights on me. Oh.
That's an excellent question. Thank you for prompting me to remember to say something about that. Yes, obviously, part of our ambition is to slot neatly into the many initiatives and businesses that already exist. So we want to try and partner with people to kind of deliver as many collaborations as we can. It's a space that lends itself to events and performance. We want to be hosting as many events and being associating with that kind of thing as we can. We want to partner with local organisations that do that kind of thing. I've been chatting with Motion House this morning about the ways in which we might be able to collaborate, and there are various others as well. So yes, we want to make the very best use of the space, and you know, it as well as a collaboration space, it can lend itself to pop-up galleries. It can lend itself to performance art. It can lend itself to all sorts of stuff. So yeah, we have plans to do all of that and make sure that we're working with the partners that we hope to make and the connections we hope to make within the Leamington community to deliver on that. So yeah, definitely.
Brilliant, thank you. Is there another question at the back? I don't know where the box is now. Oh, there it is. Brilliant, thank you.
Graham, this is a question quickly for you, if you don't mind. I'd like some advice. My daughter studied game art at Coventry, left with a first. Unfortunately, she happened to leave during COVID, so she missed out on the opportunity of an intern. There was no degree show that year because of COVID. 2 years on, she still can't get a job in the games industry because once you've left and have missed the opportunity for an internship, it seems you always have to have 2 years' experience, even as a junior designer. She's proficient in Maya, ZBrush, Unreal. She's brilliant at all of it. She still works on her own project. She's currently building something that looks a little bit like the Death Star. What should she do? Can you give her some advice for me?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. I would say internships are one route in, but most studios do still have associate positions as well, which require sometimes only a few months of experience or no experience. What I would probably say is all the studios have a recruitment team, and it would be good to talk to those recruiters, just get in touch with them over LinkedIn or email directly into the companies and ask for their advice on what the next steps would be. And our recruiter, Chris McCarthy, for example, would be more than happy to talk to you and give advice on CVs and portfolios and things like that, because it benefits everyone to help the younger generation getting into this industry. So I would lean on the recruiters of each of the companies to try and get advice and help from those. Even if they don't have positions available in the companies, they are often, they're more than often, very helpful to people who want advice.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'd also suggest having a look at the Interactive Futures YouTube. So the virtual event that was run, there's different sections in there depending on your level of education at the time. So there's stuff for schools, but there's also stuff for graduates as well on there. So have a look on if you just search Interactive Futures on YouTube. But yeah, I think Graham's absolutely right in terms of LinkedIn. I'm a big fan of telling the next generation to use LinkedIn as a tool. You can find everyone on there and reach out, and people are happy to talk. Can I just throw that question? I know it wasn't specifically to you guys, but can I throw that question to you as well? What advice would you give to the next generation in terms of getting a job in your industry? Sorry, I put you on the spot.
No, so I think at the moment it feels like the people who come to us are really entrepreneurial. They really want to try and create their own thing, and they want to accelerate and get as far as they can, as quick as they can. And sometimes you just want them to come and just be really into stuff and just be really excited about stuff. So we've had an intern come in just recently over the last few weeks, and he's just always seemed so excited about everything. He was excited to walk into a studio, and I think. In our industry, where it is saturated, the marketplace, that kind of attitude does make a big difference. If you know your stuff, know who you're talking to, and you're excited about it, that really makes a difference and helps separate you.
Brilliant, thank you. Any wise words there, Grant?
I guess I'd echo exactly what you said. Like, come excited and open-minded and all that sort of stuff. The other thing I'd say is that one of the challenges is when you apply for a job, you're applying for a specific role, and so I think especially as youngsters coming into the industry, they kind of try and tailor what they say to try and fit with what the job description says, and it's only when you've chatted to them for a while sometimes that you actually uncover they've got 2 or 3 brilliant skill sets or their side hustle or their hobby that would be massively useful. And our industry moves at such a pace that actually multi-tools, as people who could do loads of different stuff, are really useful. And so I'd advise people to kind of go with your whole self, to meet businesses if you can, and sort of share the breadth of what you're interested in and what you could do and what you could bring to the party. I'd also say, because I never did this when I was younger, but when you have a job interview, it's as much about working out if the company's right for you as it is the other way around. And I think sometimes that balance is lost. So make sure that, go and find out what you need to find out. Go and seek people out on LinkedIn. Go and chat to them. I'm always up for chatting to young people who are interested in our industry. So by all means, tap me up and we'll have a chat.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I think we might have time for one more question, if anyone's got one. Oh, yep, I think that's Claire. The lights are quite bright.
So it's great to hear all the kind of private investment and the kind of, investment in the community. But what does the town and the wider region need to do to be on that global stage? So quite often, when you're working globally, people know the UK, they know London, and they know nothing else. So what do we need to do as a place to actually make and get the recognition for what we're doing?
What a great question to end on. Yeah, I'm going to ask that to all of you. Gareth, I'm going to come to you first.
I don't know the answer. One of the things I can say is, so we have a trade body called the IPA, which is the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising. And one of the things they've been working really hard to do is to de-Londonify themselves, right? So our industry in particular seems to be quite heavily rooted around London, and that's what gets the noise made on a global stage. But as an industry body, they're being really proactive about trying to raise the profile of creativity outside of London. And so where there are opportunities, so that means there's lots of initiatives cropping up. And I think where there's an opportunity for any business in the creative industries locally to get involved in initiatives that are happening at a national level, we as a community should be doing that. We should be raising the flag for all of the creative industries that aren't London. So I would keep an eye out for national bodies whose job it is to try and spread that profile and lend your voice and your case studies and your capabilities to that discussion, because all it will do then is raise the profile of the region at a national level. I can't think of much else there.
No, I think that's brilliant. And I agree with you. I think take advantage of the narrative that seems to be more about the regions. Grab that and use that, definitely. Adam, what about you?
For us, the more that we've been working globally, the more we've been working with people in other countries, the less it seems to have mattered that we're from Leamington Spa. We're working a lot with a couple of companies in America, and if we told them we're an hour outside London, they'd just think that's London. So there's a little bit of a mindset shift that we kind of need to have as a whole. Like, be proud of Leamington, but don't think that we have to get Leamington up before we can go out. And then another part that I think feeds into that is we don't have, Leamington is great, right? We all love Leamington, and we don't have any problem recruiting anybody who is of an age of the people on the stage, because everybody of this age wants to come and live in Leamington. We don't necessarily have too much of a problem getting graduates either, because we've got some great universities nearby, Birmingham included, and so graduates, they will come and they'll spend a year with us and they'll be really excited. We have a little bit of a hole in the middle, and I think anything, and I don't have the answer to this, but anything that we could do as a community to try and make people realise that, you know what, you don't actually necessarily need to go running off. You can build a really exciting career right here, then in that middle section, I think would be really powerful.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And yeah, you're right. There's a lot of kind of leafy Warwickshire with nice schools, but that, we need to change that narrative a little bit, don't we? What about you, Graham?
It's quite a difficult one, I guess, to answer in terms of games industry. So I don't have a great deal to add, apart from, I guess, the games industry is probably unique on the stage here in the way that it's purely a digital media. So it doesn't really matter where it comes from, because it goes worldwide no matter what. And even some of the biggest games in the world, people probably couldn't say which particular town in America they came out of, and it's the same kind of thing here. You wouldn't necessarily know, even people in the area wouldn't know that things like Forza Horizon are actually made just a mile down the road. But it's a worldwide game, and everyone knows that brand. And if someone takes the time to look behind the scenes, they find out that Playground Games developed that game, and then they find out that Playground Games are based here in Leamington. So I don't know how much I'd put importance on the fact, on people knowing that those studios are based right here from the outset. For us, it's more important that people know that the games are awesome and that they want to keep buying the games and keep engaging with the games, because that creates that economic interest in this area for us.
Brilliant. No, really important point. I think, it's that kind of sense, isn't it, of sort of not being held back by it, going for those global opportunities. I think that's a great place to end this session. So I hope you'll join me in thanking our panel and speakers today, and thank you to all of you as well.